In an age where women were meant to be pawns of diplomacy, one woman chose to be the hand that wielded the sword. History remembers the great heathen army and the kings who fell before them, but it often whispers when it should shout the name of the woman who held the heart of England together. She was the daughter of a king, the wife of a lord, and the mother of a nation's defense. This is the story of Æthelflæd, the Lady of the Mercians, the warrior queen who built the foundations of a united England.
To understand Æthelflæd, you must first understand the world she was born into. The year was approximately 870. The England we know today did not exist. Instead, it was a fractured landscape of warring kingdoms, Wessex, Mercia, East Anglia, and Northumbria, all of which were being systematically dismantled by the relentless fury of the Vikings. By the time Æthelflæd was a young girl, only her father's kingdom of Wessex stood between the Norse invaders and the total conquest of the island. Her father was Alfred the Great, and her childhood was one of constant flight, hidden camps, and the smell of wood smoke and iron.
She was raised in the shadow of survival. While other princesses might have been taught only the arts of the hearth, Æthelflæd was a child of the resistance. She watched her father transform from a hunted fugitive in the marshes of Athelney into the savior of the West Saxons. She learned that a crown was not a piece of jewelry, but a heavy burden of responsibility. She saw firsthand how a kingdom could be rebuilt through a combination of brutal warfare and ingenious administration. This education in statecraft and strategy would become her greatest weapon.
At the age of 16, her life took a turn that was common for the era, but would yield uncommon results. To solidify an alliance between Wessex and the neighboring kingdom of Mercia, Alfred married her to Æthelred, the lord of the Mercians. It was a political union designed to bind the two strongest remaining English powers against the Danelaw. But Æthelred was much older than her, and Mercia was a broken land. It was a kingdom that had lost its royal line, its pride, and much of its territory to the Vikings. When Æthelflæd arrived in the Mercian capital of Gloucester, she didn't just come as a bride, she came as a symbol of hope.
For the first years of her marriage, she worked alongside her husband to restore the shattered infrastructure of Mercia. They rebuilt churches, reorganized the law, and began the gargantuan task of fortifying their borders. But a shadow began to fall over the household. Æthelred's health began to fail. In an era where a leader's physical strength was the only thing keeping the wolves at bay, a sick ruler was a death sentence for a kingdom. This is where the legend of Æthelflæd truly begins. As her husband grew weaker, Æthelflæd did something unprecedented. She did not retreat into the shadows of the court. She did not wait for a male regent to take control. She stepped into the light. She began signing charters in her own name. She led negotiations with neighboring lords. She took command of the Mercian military. The Vikings, sensing weakness in the aging Æthelred, began to ramp up their raids, expecting an easy victory against a woman. They were lethally mistaken.
By 911, Æthelred passed away. In any other kingdom, in any other century, this would have been the end of a woman's political life. She would have been sent to a nunnery or married off to the next successor. But the people of Mercia had seen her in action. They had seen her intelligence, her resolve, and her courage. Breaking all tradition, the Mercian Witan, or Council of Nobles, formally accepted her as their sole ruler. She became the Lady of the Mercians. Not a queen in name, for Mercia no longer claimed the status of a kingdom independent of Wessex's influence, but a sovereign in every practical sense.
Her reign was defined by iron and stone. Working in a brilliant, coordinated pincer movement with her brother, King Edward the Elder of Wessex, Æthelflæd launched a systematic campaign to reclaim the heart of England. Her strategy was not based on reckless charges, but on the burr system. She would march into a territory, defeat the local Viking garrison, and immediately begin the construction of a fortified town. These burrs were more than just forts. They were economic engines and military hubs that allowed her to project power into the Danelaw.
In 907, she personally oversaw the reconstruction of the ancient Roman city of Chester. This was a masterstroke of strategy. By securing Chester, she cut off the Viking sea routes between Ireland and northern England. When a combined force of Northmen and Irish raiders attempted to take the city, the stories say she met them with a brilliance that bordered on the psychological. Legends tell of her using everything from boiling beer to hives of angry bees to break the spirit of the besiegers. Whether these specific tales are exaggerated or not, the result was clear. She held Chester, and the Vikings learned to fear the lady.
In 910, her leadership was put to the ultimate test during the Battle of Tettenhall. While many historical records focus on her brother, Edward, it was the Mercian forces under her command and preparation that provided the backbone of the English victory. The battle was a slaughter. 3 Viking kings were killed, and the power of the Northmen in the Midlands was broken forever. The road was open for Æthelflæd to go on the offensive.
She began a relentless march eastward. In 917, she led her army against Derby, one of the legendary 5 boroughs of the Danelaw. This was a place of immense symbolic and strategic importance. The fighting was fierce. 4 of her most trusted officers, men she treated as brothers, were killed within the city gates. The loss devastated her, but it did not stop her. She took Derby, marking the first time a major Viking stronghold had fallen to the English in decades.
A year later, she turned her eyes toward Leicester. The Viking garrison there, hearing of her approach and knowing her reputation for both tactical genius and absolute resolve, surrendered without a single drop of blood being shed. Her influence was growing so great that the leaders of York, the very seat of Viking power in the north, began negotiations to pledge their loyalty to her. They didn't seek terms with her brother, the King of Wessex. They wanted the protection and the leadership of the Lady of the Mercians. Tragically, just as she was on the verge of this crowning achievement, fate intervened. In June of 918, at the height of her power, and just as the submission of York was being finalized, Æthelflæd died suddenly at Tamworth. She was around 48 years old. Her death sent shockwaves through the country.
For centuries, Æthelflæd was almost erased from the history books. The West Saxon chroniclers, writing in the service of her brother and his descendants, sought to minimize her role. They wanted to present the unification of England as a purely male, purely Wessex-driven achievement. In their records, her incredible victories are often reduced to single lines or attributed entirely to her brother. They portrayed her as a supportive sister rather than the sovereign commander she truly was.
But you cannot bury a legacy that was built in stone and blood. Modern archaeology and a closer look at Mercian records have brought the lady back to the forefront of the English story. Without her, it is highly likely that the Viking Danelaw would have survived much longer, perhaps permanently altering the culture and language of the island. She was the strategist who turned the tide. She was the architect who built the defenses that allowed a single, unified England to emerge from the chaos of the Viking Age. Æthelflæd was a woman who lived in a world of shields and fire, and she not only survived it, she mastered it. She proved that leadership is not a matter of gender, but of vision, grit, and the ability to inspire a people to believe in a future that hasn't been written yet. She was a warrior, a diplomat, and a founder of a nation. Her name should be spoken alongside the greatest figures of the medieval world. She was the Lady of the Mercians, and her reign changed the course of history forever. Subscribe for more.